Why Kyle Richards is getting impatient amid Mauricio's split. In a preview for The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Season 14, Episode 13, set to air February 25, Kyle Richards sits down with her therapist and life coach to talk about how she's been doing as an empty nester and how she perceives her family moving on during her separation from Mauricio Umansky. After Kyle explains an upcoming trip Mauricio is planning with their youngest daughter, Portia Umansky, Kyle's therapist gets right to the point, asking, "Is this going to be the first summer you don't all spend together?" "This is the first summer," the actress confirms. She then adds, the fact that he took Portia alone. I've never been away from Portia like that. Ever. And he's going to do a guy's trip. Basically, he goes and lives his life. He's having fun, and I've kind of been just working. Kyle continues, and I know that that's what being separated is supposed to be, taking this time to figure out everything. Or just get perspective, if nothing else, interjects her therapist. Right, Kyle agrees. Everyone is like, are you getting divorced? Are you getting divorced? Everybody asks me that. I think I'm anxious and I'm getting impatient. I'm impatient because I want to know what my life's gonna be, she explains. I think it's different for men. He's just going and living his best life. Kyle says of Mauricio, adding, he's a happy little camper. After hearing this, Jamie poses a thoughtful question. Why can't you live your best life too? No, I can, she demurs at first. I guess it's just, there's a little part of me that thinks, okay, say that I move on with somebody new. And then what if he's like, okay, I went and sowed my wild oats, or whatever that expression is, and the life coach finishes the thought for her, and I want to come back. Yeah. The preview ends on that emotional cliffhanger. For more on Kyle's thoughts about Mauricio's best life in the wake of their split, tune in on Tuesday at 8/7C. Are Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky still separated? Yes, Kyle and Mauricio are still legally separated. In a December 2024 appearance on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, Kyle told the host that they have no plans to formally divorce. She reiterated this on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills after show while talking to fellow cast member Erica Jane. Plus, while responding to Sutton Strack's recommendation that she hire attorneys to begin divorce proceedings on Season 14, Episode 2, Kyle explained, "At the end of the day, I have to do what feels right to me, and I did not feel ready to go do that, and I'll know when that's time to do that." Where do Kyle Richards and Mauricio stand today? Despite the separation, Kyle and Mauricio remain on good terms. On a recent episode of RHOBH, they even shared an emotional moment while discussing their separate living arrangements. They've stayed good friends throughout the split, per Kyle's December briefing on Bravo interview, and still get along really well. Additionally, she said, they're navigating the new dynamic by staying in frequent communication, which includes texting pretty much every few days and speaking in person or via phone maybe a couple of times a week. The uncertain horizon, Kyle Richards and the impatience of moving on. Kyle Richards, star of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, had never imagined that the uncharted waters of separation would come to define such a significant period of her life. In the latest episode of RHOBH, she sat across from her therapist, reflecting on a moment that was both intimate and raw. Her life had always been in the public eye, but now a more vulnerable side of her was being revealed, one that seemed to cry out for answers in a world that no longer seemed so predictable. Amid the ongoing split from her husband, Mauricio Umansky, Kyle was grappling with uncertainty, impatience, and the looming question: what would her life look like now? A time of reflection and separation. It had been some months since Kyle and Mauricio's separation was made public, and even longer since they had truly connected in the way they once did. The couple, known for their strong partnership, had found themselves living in different homes, navigating the quiet changes of an evolving relationship. Yet, in a moment of unexpected clarity, Kyle sat with her therapist, looking for answers, not necessarily about the future of her marriage, but about the future of herself. As Kyle explained her feelings in this episode, the weight of a mother's concern was evident. The idea of their youngest daughter, Portia, going on a trip alone with her father, the first summer they wouldn't all be together, seemed almost surreal to Kyle. She had never been away from Portia like that, and the looming realization of the changing family dynamic was beginning to sink in. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "This is the first summer," confirming what she hadn't fully allowed herself to feel. The thought of Mauricio taking Portia on a trip alone, without her, felt like a sharp reminder of the distance that had grown between them, both as a couple and as a family. "I've never been away from Portia like that. Ever," she said, the pain of that truth hanging in the air. For a mother who had been so involved in her children's lives, this marked the beginning of a new chapter. One that was full of possibility, but equally full of sadness. Yet, even as she acknowledged this change, Kyle also understood that Mauricio, her estranged husband, seemed to be living his life differently. He was taking time for himself, creating new memories, and even going on a guy's trip. She observed how he appeared to be having fun, while Kyle found herself immersed in work. "I know that that's what being separated is supposed to be, taking this time to figure out everything," she said, the hesitation in her voice revealing a sense of unease. It was a time to reflect, but it also raised a lot of questions about what the future held, not only for her marriage, but also for her identity. The impatience of uncertainty. As the conversation deepened, Kyle's frustrations began to surface. It was clear that while she had accepted the need for space and time to heal, she was growing impatient. "Everyone is like, 'Are you getting divorced? Are you getting divorced?'" she explained. The constant questions from friends, family, and the public had begun to take their toll. "I think I'm anxious and I'm getting impatient," she admitted, her voice quieter now. The reality of not knowing the answer to those questions, the very ones she had been asked repeatedly, was gnawing at her. The world expected answers, and Kyle wanted answers, too. She wanted to know what the future held, but she couldn't seem to figure it out. There was a palpable tension between what she knew to be true about her current situation and what she hoped for herself in the future. "I'm impatient because I want to know what my life's gonna be," Kyle said. "I think it's different for men, you know? I mean, he's just going and living his best life. He's a happy little camper." The words stung, and there was a bittersweet truth in them. Mauricio seemed to be living in the present, embracing whatever came next without the same weight of doubt. Kyle, on the other hand, was left with her hands full, working, processing, and living in a reality that was no longer familiar. The question her therapist posed next cut to the heart of Kyle's internal conflict. "Why can't you live your best life too?" Kyle seemed taken aback by the question. At first, she demurred, almost as if she hadn't truly considered it. "No, I can," she replied, but there was something behind her words that indicated a hesitation. Perhaps it was fear of change, of moving on, of finding herself in a space that felt unfamiliar, even uncertain. She continued, her thoughts trailing off. "I guess it's just, there's a little part of me that thinks, okay, say that I move on with somebody new. And then what if he's like, okay, I went and sowed my wild oats, or whatever that expression is, and—" Her therapist, ever insightful, finished the thought for her, capturing the essence of what Kyle feared. "And I want to come back." The idea of opening herself up to someone new, only to be faced with the possibility that Mauricio could return after his own time of exploration, was a scenario Kyle hadn't fully allowed herself to consider until now. "Yeah," Kyle whispered, her voice soft and contemplative. A new chapter, a familiar fear. As the preview ended, it was clear that Kyle's journey wasn't about finding answers immediately. It wasn't about rushing toward a decision she wasn't ready to make. It was about living with the uncertainty and trying to navigate her own path through a world that had suddenly changed around her. The reality of her separation was sinking in more deeply, but so was the realization that she wasn't alone in this. She had built a life full of relationships, both with her family and with herself. And while the prospect of moving on, both emotionally and romantically, was daunting, it was also an opportunity for reinvention.